I'm Michael Harrison. Welcome to the third installment of Up Close and Far Out, a series of commentaries and interviews for communications professionals, pop culture aficionados, political junkies, media freaks, science enthusiasts, fans of radio, followers of technology, and the philosophically curious. Perhaps from the standpoint of today's highly pinpointed style of marketing, that might be too broad a target audience to reach successfully. Oh well, I'll take my chances. On this episode, we'll talk about investigative journalism, conspiracy theories, and the importance of critical thinking to maintaining a free and healthy society. It boils down to the growing tendency of the media, politicians, and the intellectually dishonest from all walks of life to seek victory at the expense of truth. I was prompted to approach this subject by the tsunami of conspiracy theories flooding talk shows, commentaries, and social media, in which we nearly drowned immediately following the attempted assassination of the former president. Our guest, with whom I'm going to bounce a few of these ideas around, is one of the finest independent investigative reporters in America. He's a respected historian and a prolific author of more than 24 powerful books. His bestseller from 2016, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, chronicles the life and times and mysterious death of celebrated journalist Dorothy Kilgallen and the JFK assassination. But be forewarned, or perhaps assured, that this will not be a book interview. I'm just citing his credits. He's a former noted criminal defense attorney and ESPN, USA Today, and ABC trial analyst for the Mike Tyson, O.J. Simpson, and Kobe Bryant cases. His books include biographies of Tyson spy Jonathan Pollard and Holocaust survivor Cecilia Rexon, as well as 6 touching on the assassination of JFK. His most recent book, Fighting for Justice, makes a strong case for the first time through a primary source, corruption within the Warren Commission, and his recent title, Collateral Damage, connected for the first time the deaths of Marilyn Monroe, Dorothy Kilgallen, and JFK. Our guest's alma mater, Purdue University, is archiving his body of work alongside those of Neil Armstrong and Amelia Earhart. His name is Mark Shaw. Here we go. I'm talking about the fine line between investigative journalism and conspiracy theories. Are you the right guy for me to be talking to today about that?
Well, I think so, because I've pretty much dedicated my research years going way back to making sure that I'm on the edge of investigative journalism, because that's the honorable profession. And so, yes, I think I can speak to that for sure.
Have you ever known in your career, without mentioning names, people who started out as honorable investigative journalists and wound up, because of any success that they've had, trying to feed the demand for their services by coming up with things that are not necessarily worth investigating?
Yes, I have, and an awful lot of them are authors or so-called experts in a particular area. Now, of course, as you know, I've spent almost 15 years looking at the JFK assassination, but it branches out from there as well, because most of the time what happens with some of these well-intended journalists is that they're not getting enough publicity. They're not selling enough books. They're not getting enough articles. They're not getting enough television time. And so they have to kind of avoid using just the truth, investigating as they should, and for whatever reason they get into that arena where they've lost all their ethics and all their morals.
And do you see this as a trend that is growing?
Unfortunately, yes, especially in the world of politics, but even otherwise. I call anybody that's involved with conspiracy theories lazy journalists, if you want to call them journalists at all. Everybody today in the media, and I certainly avoid you being in that group because I have such respect for you and the truth and all of that. Everybody in the media is looking for that spectacular headline. It's interesting. You know, I've written about the famous journalist Dorothy Kilgallen. Dorothy went out and found the facts, and then she came up with the headline. In today's media, unfortunately, it's the other way around. They want that headline that will get them media notoriety, in the social media and all of that. And so they come up with that headline, and then they try to fit the facts to it some way or another. I get so tired of reading these articles where there's no substance to any of the sources that they come up with, and that's the killer of the truth. These sources that they're not credible, and unfortunately, they're the ones that get the headlines.
Sometimes the headlines, and we see this on social media, and I guess in a broad sense you could consider YouTube to be social media. And YouTube is where so much of the action is. Some of the headlines are such clickbait, and clickbait is a very interesting term, isn't it? They're such clickbait that there isn't even any connection. You even see it in the comments, like, why'd you drag me to this thing? There's absolutely no connection between the headline, the clickbait, and the story. It's beyond shameless. It's a lie. And
well, it is, and I've tried to make it my practice to try to uncover a lot of these distortions of history. I'm a historian more than anything, and we need to learn from history and make sure that history is correct. And there's so many distortions of history out there. I notice it. I've got a lot of many thousands of views on YouTube of my presentations on my last 4 books. And I look at some of the comments on there, and then I look at some of the articles that are written about it, and I don't even know if that person really listened to me or not. But I'm not the only one. I'm sure you go through that as well, because, I hate to use this word a little bit, but there's almost a cult following out there. They're really not interested in the truth. They're not interested in the normal aspect of what's going on in society. They gravitate towards these conspiracy theories, which have no basis to them whatsoever. And so I think that's really disappointing. And now it's happening again with the political world, and it's just unfortunate. And I really tell people my books are all about stopping and thinking, but also the importance there, Michael, in my opinion, is ask questions. Go look at what somebody's written. Fine, okay, read it, see what you think, and then ask questions. And unfortunately, with major historical events, that was the downfall. People never asked the right questions.
Well, I mean, it's amazing to this day that the JFK murder was not solved to the satisfaction of most thinking people, and I'm very careful bringing that up so as we don't go down that rabbit hole. But when you talk about writing about it, do you find that just the fact that you're writing about the JFK assassination all these years later, that people roll their eyes and go, oh God, another one?
Oh, absolutely. That word conspiracy is terrible because it lumps in everything. The truth, the untruth, everything else is garbled in there. I'll give you a good example of what I call investigative journalism, and that's somebody that looks for primary sources, who's on the job. And unfortunately, so many of the authors and so-called experts, I won't name them today, but there's many of them, who were never there in 1963 when JFK died. They were never there for the Warren Commission investigation, but Dorothy Kilgallen was. She was in Dallas. She was at the Ruby trial. She's the only reporter out of 400 that interviewed the guy. And so when I found out about her, I just latched onto that because I could tell that she was a woman of the truth. Just look at what happens with the trials today. The former president in New York City. So much blabbermouth came out of that media for that trial that nobody could really figure out what the hell was going on, and that's not fair to him, and that's not fair to the public. So, and Michael, what disturbs me, it's not just the offshoot media anymore, the sensational media. It's also the mainstream media, because they've got to compete with the social media out there that's going in directions that have no basis for what they're talking about at all.
Yeah, the bar has been lowered, and the term mainstream media, the term legacy media, the term corporate media, you hear that a lot now. Everybody blames the media, and everybody has some validity in those blames. But being in a business where I have one foot in the mainstream media and one foot in the alternative media, and I've always been in that kind of a ballpark all the way back to my days as an underground FM album rock jock, I find that there is no mainstream media anymore. That's a figment of our imagination, and that collectively, those things that still get away with being, the counterculture, the alternative media, the underground social media, all that they are collectively stronger than the mainstream media. What are your thoughts about that observation?
Well, unfortunately, I agree. I get called every name in the book for being involved with the JFK assassination. I'll give you a good example. I looked into Marilyn Monroe death, and the headline when she died was "Marilyn kills self, committed suicide." And I wondered about that because I found a Dorothy Kilgallen column. She was a friend of Marilyn's that said Marilyn's on the upswing. She's got movie offers. She's going to Las Vegas. She's going to be on Broadway. And I had to say to myself, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like somebody that's going to take her life. And then I found corroboration for the fact that made no sense whatsoever. But it was perpetuated by column after column and people on television, just one or two of them taking off down that rabbit hole. And that poor woman never got the justice she deserved, just like Dorothy didn't. And just like, you go back to some of the real great investigative reporting. I would say the Pentagon Papers was one of them. I think the Nixon tapes. That was real investigative reporting because they looked into those things, and we need that in society. We need people like you who will look at something that's happened and say, okay, wait a minute, I need to look into this. I need to figure out exactly what happened here because I'm in the media and I have a duty to go ahead and tell my listeners what I have uncovered with regard to the truth here, and then hopefully they will go in that direction.
Well, you give me far more credit for being an investigative reporter than I deserve, but one of the things that I answer when people ask me the question of our talk show hosts, because that's my main area of coverage, our talk show hosts and commentators, are they sincere about what they say they believe? And my answer to that is, I don't know. I'm not in their heads. I don't know whether they're sincere. What I care about is, are they practicing deceit, or are they trying to be truthful? Mm-hmm. You see, you can give the wrong information, but think it's the right information, and as a result, you're guilty of being wrong. But you could also give the wrong information knowing it's wrong for purposes of self-gain or any other reason, monetarily or psychologically, and then you're practicing deceit. It's for example, if a meteorologist went on the air and said, tomorrow it will rain, and tomorrow it's sunny. Well, he or she might have been wrong, but then you could find out that the meteorologist owns stock in the umbrella company. and so there are all these different layers. So when people sometimes are just wrong and then they admit to it, they go, you lied. Those are lies. And they're not necessarily lies. They just might be wrong. I find it's the intent of the speaker, the intent of the writer.
I'm just going to talk about that. Motive.
Yeah, what is the motive? Go ahead, speak about it.
Well, as a former criminal defense lawyer and all of that was what I always looked at with any, I covered the Simpson case, I covered Kobe Bryant, I covered Tyson, I covered all that. I was always looking at motive, and even when I was trying jury cases, what's the motive behind the journalist who is throwing out that headline? Why are they doing that? Now, like you say, is it just the fact that they've looked into it and maybe not as far as they should, and then they come up with that headline and the story? And so, unfortunately, then they find out that wasn't true. That's one kind of wrong investigative journalism, but it's not the worst kind. The worst kind is when somebody comes up with some sort of an outrageous headline in a story, knowing that it is not true. Those are the people that I have very little respect for, and that's why I tell people, when you read something, ask questions, go and look for yourself, find out for yourself exactly what the facts are, and then make up your own mind.
And engage in critical thinking. There's a term that we don't hear much of, critical thinking. I don't think we teach it in the schools. I know I never learned critical thinking. I just learned to memorize dates. Memorize dates and lofty statements that were not necessarily true, such as Christopher Columbus discovered America. When did he do it? Mm-hmm. In 1493? Wrong, 1492. You get a B. as opposed to an A for remembering it was that the untruth was in the right year. When did the untruth take place? Is it the right year or the wrong year that the untruth took place?
Yes, I get quite a few investigative journalists who interview me, and I can always tell, and I'm sure you can, Michael, whether they've done their homework or not. Have they read The Reporter Who Knew Too Much before they're going to ask me about it? Are they going to bring up some facts and things that are just don't even make any sense with regard to things? And most of the times, I'll just thank them and say that I think the interview is over, because I'm not going to waste my time, promoting what they're trying to do with whatever kind of based on whatever motive that they have that way. And I'm not so sure these investigative reporters and the people who teach journalism really get down to that level to figure out exactly how they are going to help young people decide how they're going to make their mark in the journalism arena, because it's tough to do. If you're just out there throwing out the facts and everything else, you're going to have a hard time ever getting anything printed these days.
Yeah, and also if you don't fit the target audience that the platform you're being hired by is trying to fit. And that's when it really gets murky. And that's really when it gets ugly, is when you target. It'd be, for example, and I know you don't think this way, and I beg the audience that doesn't know me and doesn't know you listening to this to at least have trust that I believe what I'm saying to be true. I may be wrong, but I believe what I'm saying to be true. It would be like you saying, all right, I want to sell another couple of books about this JFK thing. There's such a market out there. People are just hungry for anything on JFK, and coming up with stuff to please them. I think we see way too much of that today in the media, feeding the target audience, giving them that dopamine, that making them feel good about what they're invested in. And I think that this is a vicious cycle, and it's getting worse. And I think it's unraveling our common understanding of what self-evident truths happen to be.
You see, the reason that you're been so successful, and as I told you, and I mean, I have such respect for you. I probably admire you more than any person I've met since I've been on the face of the earth, is because you have two things. One, you have trust, and that trust is based on your reputation. So when people listen to you or interviewed by you or whatever, they have that same sort of respect. Dorothy had that respect, and that's why you have the best sources. You see. That's why you have the best sources. That's why those people who are reliable and credible and everything come to Michael Harrison and want to be on the program, because they know what? They know they're going to be taken seriously, and that's all they can ask is that they're taken seriously.
Well, you're very kind. I want to share with people listening to this conversation a little bit of insight into the name that has come up a number of times. And actually, it's a name that brought you and I together. We knew of each other for years in the business when you were in different parts of the media. And you have a background that is just so diverse. You've done a lot of things in media and beyond. So you bring a lot of life experience to your work. But the name Dorothy Kilgallen, and another phrase that you use is that you try to bring her justice. You try to bring JFK justice. Anybody who has been the victim of a crime and the truth never really came out about that crime, they have been denied justice in the Mark Shaw book of ethics. Let's take a couple of minutes at the tail end of this conversation just to let people know about Dorothy Kilgallen, because not only was she denied justice in the fact that you believe her death was not an overdose of drugs or accidental, but that she was, as the title of your book said, the reporter who knew too much. She came very close. Maybe she came so close that she had the whole story about the assassination of JFK. And she died, and that was it. But what I find another injustice to Dorothy Kilgallen, and I'll turn the floor over to you for a couple of minutes, is that she never received her place in media history. Most people don't know who she is, and she was arguably one of the most powerful media figures of the mid-20th century. Why is that? What happened to Dorothy Kilgallen in terms of our understanding of media history?
Well, it's interesting because the New York Post called her the most powerful female voice in America. She was syndicated to 200 newspapers across the country when everybody read newspapers, the New York Post, on What's My Line, watched by 10 million people every Sunday night. You know, I always tell people when they say, give me a portrait of Dorothy, I say, go on the internet and look, or look in my books, and look at a photograph of her in the middle of the courtroom at the Dr. Sam Shepard case, which became the Fugitive film and all of that. She's standing there, and she's surrounded by 25 or 30 reporters who are looking at her with such admiration and everything like that. So what happened was that she got too close to the assassination truth, the Warren Commission corruption, as I pointed out in my latest book, and all of that. And so the powerful men at the Warren Commission, LBJ and Hoover and all of them, they couldn't let her write a book she was writing for Random House. It couldn't be published. And so I've shown the journey to her death, the march to her death, where that couldn't happen. They even followed her young son to warn her, stop, stop, stop. And then her hairdresser said, Dorothy said, if the wrong people knew what I know about the assassination, it would cost me my life. I'm buying a gun. And she did. And then people ask me, well, why didn't she shut up? And I say, because she thought she was invincible. So I think what really has made a lot of difference to me with my books has been the interaction through email of young women around the world who have gotten in touch with me and said, you know, I've read your books about Dorothy Kilgallen. I'm going to study journalism, and I want to be just like Dorothy. I wish we had a reporter like her today, and I'm going to do that. That means more to me than selling any books or doing anything, that there may be people who will take the torch and become the kind of reporters that we need today, Michael. That's for sure.
And there you have it, a conversation with noted historian, prolific author, and investigative reporter Mark Shaw. You can learn all about Mark Shaw at markshawbooks.com. I hope you enjoyed our third video installment of Up Close and Far Out with Michael Harrison. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to receive future editions of this series and our other videos on the Talkers Media channel. Ring the bell to be notified. Our producer is the brilliant Matthew B. Harrison. Up Close and Far Out with Michael Harrison is a production of Good Phone Communications, presented in association with Talkers Media. Copyright 2024, Good Phone Communications. All rights reserved.